We do have NBC's Ron Allen, who is outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan with more on this significant decision, Ron. Again, just to remind our viewers of what is happening, where you are a jury there, found the Trump organization guilty of all charges, 15 counts of tax fraud. So break down specifically what the jury said and what the meaning of this is.
What it means is that the prosecution convinced the jury that the Trump organization for a period of 15 years was essentially running a scheme inside the company that was defrauding the taxpayers of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, the taxpayers of the state of New York, in the way it was conducting business. Now, the chief witness in this case was Alan Weisselberg, who was the former chief financial officer and close associate of Donald Trump and his family for generations, going back for a long, long time. He pled guilty to similar charges of tax fraud some time ago and agreed to testify against the company in exchange for a shorter jail term. He'll serve 5 months instead of 15 months. And he essentially said, along with other top executives from the Trump Corporation, that yes, they were paid in a way for luxury cars, for apartments, for tuition for his grandkids' private schooling and other perks, that they were paid off the books intentionally in a way so that they wouldn't have to pay income tax on it, and that the company didn't have to pay payroll taxes on that kind of income, and that there was a process whereby the records of the company were falsified to try and essentially cover this up. So the DA here, the district attorney, dug into this. This has been part of a 3-year investigation of the Trump organization and its subsidiary companies. The companies were on trial here, not the individuals, not Donald Trump himself, not Alan Weisselberg, because, again, he had already pleaded guilty. So the jury has found that the company had this practice ongoing, and that was the key thing. The defense said, well, this was a rogue operation by Alan Weisselberg and others, that it wasn't the company, that it was just this individual. But the individual was one of the highest-ranking people in the company, and therefore the jury agreed with the prosecution that this was the culture of the company. This is what they were doing. So the penalty is, at least as I understand it, $1.5 or $6 million. But the damage is to the reputation of the company beyond that. And remember, of course, this is Donald Trump's family business. This is Donald Trump as we knew him before he was president. This is real estate. This is golf clubs. This is all the stuff that Donald Trump used to make millions, if not billions of dollars. And today, a jury here in New York has found that it was essentially running a criminal operation to defraud the taxpayers. So while the fine may be $1 million or more, which is perhaps not a big deal in the grand scheme of things in terms of how much money these companies are dealing with, it is a significant hit, you might argue, to the reputation of the Trump company, the Trump family, and Donald Trump himself. Throughout this whole time, and once the indictment was handed down some time ago, former President Trump has dismissed this all as politically motivated by the democratically elected DA and the Democratic officials and leadership here in the city of New York, which he has never had much love lost between. There has been a lot of friction. However, he has also said that this is part of a witch hunt, that this is the kind of case that a civil tax authority would go after, and that it's only been prosecuted to this extent because it involves Donald Trump. That's his argument. The jury, of course, today didn't buy that. We haven't heard from President Trump just yet on social media in response to the verdict. That's what he's been saying all along. And now the question now is, what's the next step in this process? Remember, this was a 3-year investigation. This part of it was aimed at the company. There is still an ongoing criminal investigation aimed at Donald Trump himself and his practices as a businessman. Was he allegedly inflating the value of his properties, of his assets, of his income, and so forth to get favorable loans from banks and to keep his company going? Remember, this started with the payments, the alleged hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, the porn star who said that she had an affair with Donald Trump at the beginning of the campaign some time ago. Yes, this has been going on a long time. All these pieces have now come together in this particular case but there's a much larger case going on that is criminal in nature in the DA's office. And of course, a few months ago, we were reporting on a civil investigation by the New York State Attorney General into Donald Trump's business practices as well. Similar charges, similar allegations, I should say, as in the criminal matter about the inflation of property values and so forth. So it's somewhat complicated, but the jury essentially said this is pretty simple. There's fraud. There were business documents that showed a trail of fraud that had been manipulated, that had been altered or changed to try and cover things up. So while on the one hand, it's a very complicated case that might require some forensic accounting analysis, the jury saw it quite plainly as some top executives who were getting paid off the books and covering it up and defrauding the taxpayers. That's essentially what happened here today.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.